All right. Hello, everybody. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Olivia. We are here with Local Matters, and if you're watching this, you probably got a meal kit for a simple salad and a homemade veggie pizza. If it's not your first time here, welcome back. What we're going to do in this video today is we're going to walk you through the meal kit, how to take it from the box all the way to the finished product. And we'll talk about some tips along the way. If you're joining us live, feel free to put in the comments or the text any questions you might have, and we're happy to answer those live. But other than that, just to tell you a little bit about our organization, if you are new, we're a nonprofit here on the south side of Columbus, and we do a variety of things. Education is one of our major components, so we go into schools and rec centers and all kinds of places to teach about healthy eating and also how to grow food. We also do things like this where we pair our education with a meal kit and do a live cooking demo, and we also have community cooking classes twice a month at our office here where anybody can join. We also have an access component of the work we do with our Veggie van, where you can order our monthly meal kit, or just order fresh or shelf-stable produce and other goods at or below prices you would find at Kroger. So yeah, that's a little bit about us, but let's jump into the recipes that we are supposed to be getting into today. So today we have a veggie pizza. That's kind of the star of the show. And to do that, we need to make our own dough. Now, if you're joining us live, there should have been a note in your meal kit that said make the dough ahead of time because it needs to rest. But if you're making the dough fresh, I'm going to show you how to do it here, and then it is going to have to sit a little bit before you make the pizza. So we're going to do that first. We're going to work through the dough. And then after that, we'll prepare the different components for the pizza. And then while the pizza is baking, we're going to get to our simple salad. And I'll teach you guys how to make a vinaigrette from scratch. Before we do any of that, though, we are going to be doing quite a bit of cutting today. So I am going to show you how to use our knives, our very basic knife skills. So with Local Matters, we like to do the pinch and wrap method, which means we use our pincher fingers. We pinch at the base of the blade. So I'm saying this because normally people want to grab onto the handle, and that's not going to give you the best control. So we're going to pinch at the base of the blade here and then wrap our other fingers around the handle. That way we have control of the knife this way and this way. And so there's less likelihood that we slip and then either cut our fingers or injure ourselves in some other way. So the first thing is the pinch and wrap method. The other thing is what we're going to do with this other hand. Because most of the time, if we cut ourselves working with a knife, it's going to be on the hand that's not holding the knife. So one of the safest ways that we can use our hands or hold this hand while still maintaining control of what we're cutting is using the bear claw method, which just means to wrap our fingertips under our knuckles when we're cutting something. So instead of having our fingertips flat like this, and possibly nicking the top of our fingers, we're going to wrap them under our knuckles. That way, even if our knuckles are touching the blade, our fingertips are nowhere near the blade of the knife. Another way that we can hold our hand is kind of making this C or an arch. So you'll see today when I cut big things in half, I'll use this arch and then the knife will go under the arch kind of like a train in a tunnel, and we'll slice down that way. And that's another safe way to hold this hand. The very last way is to take our fingers like this and just put them right on top of the knife. So if you're cutting anything really, really small today, or you're making small dices, small cubes, you'll put your hand right on top of the knife like this, and then rock your knife back and forth. Again, your fingertips are far away from your blade. If you are taking a break from cutting today, try to point the base of your blade away from you on your cutting board so that if you're scooping things up with your hands, you don't accidentally slice yourself. But other than that, those are just the very basic knife skills. We aren't going to use our knife right away. Again, we're making our dough first here. But when we get to the cutting, remember those rules, and I'll try to remind you guys of it as well. Some other things, just make sure your oven is preheated to 450 so that when we are ready to bake, the oven is ready to go. And then the last thing I think we will need right away is some lukewarm water. So for your dough, I believe we need 1 cup of lukewarm water. So I'm going to turn around and go to the sink behind me and grab that, and then we'll get started. Okay. So, if you've never made a pizza dough before, I'm gonna walk you through how we are going to do it today. So first, we are going to combine all of our different flours, and you might have had a packet in your meal kit that had all of them combined, the whole wheat and the all-purpose flour. So they should already be mixed for you. But to our dough or our flour, that should be in a bowl. It doesn't really matter what kind of bowl, as long as it's big enough to hold your flour and mix without it kind of overspilling. So you're gonna put your flour in a bowl, and then we've got our yeast packets, which you should also have in your meal kit. We're gonna put the whole thing in here. So you're gonna dump the entire yeast packet just right into your flour. And the last thing we are going to do is we are going to put that 1 cup of lukewarm water in with the yeast and the flour. So I'm gonna pour mine in now. And then immediately what you're gonna wanna do is mix well. I'm gonna use a wooden spoon for this because I find that it is the easiest to stir everything around. But you're welcome to use any utensil that you feel comfortable mixing your dough with. I just find that wood tends to stick a little bit less and it's a little bit less messy. So now that we've got the water incorporated the best we can, we're now going to put some oil and some salt in here. Now, oil and salt, aside from giving the dough really good flavor, are also going to help the gluten develop, but not too much. So ideally for a pizza dough, you want it to hold its structure and you don't want it to be flaky at all. So we're gonna add some salt to our mixture. We're just gonna pour it right in. And then I believe, and I'm gonna check my quantities again, because it's really important when you're making dough to have the exact quantities, that we've got 2 tablespoons of canola or olive oil. So again, in here so far, we've got our flour, we've got our water and our yeast. We mix that together, and then we're gonna add salt and our olive oil. And again, the salt and the fat from the olive oil are really gonna improve the texture of the dough. And at this point, since my dough is pretty well together, or it's not really a liquid anymore, I'm gonna get in there with my hands. Feel free to continue with your utensils, but I find that using your hands, especially at this stage, it gets everything better incorporated quicker. So don't be afraid to get messy, just make sure your hands are washed. So again, I'm just mixing this until the dough is pretty well combined. So there's not a lot of flour or liquid hanging out in the bowl. It's one combined piece. And once that is the case, we are going to start kneading the dough. And we're going to knead this dough for about 5 minutes. And I'm going to show you the best technique for kneading dough. Okay, so step number 1, whenever you're kneading dough, you want to do it on a surface that is lightly floured. So I have a little cup of flour right here, and I'm just going to flour this surface. Reason being is you really don't want your dough to stick while you're in the middle of kneading and it just make a whole big sticky mess. So I've got a little bit of flour down on my surface, and then I'm gonna put my dough ball right in the center. And you can see right now it's together, but it kind of doesn't look, like a beautiful dough ball that you would see that's ready, or a pre-made dough ball that you would find in the grocery. It's kind of chunky, but by the time we're done kneading this, it will look beautiful, I promise. So the way that we are going to knead our dough today is by using the kind of heel of our hand. So we are going to gather our dough kind of up in a little ball. We're going to push with the heel of our hand, and I'm left-handed, but use whatever hand you feel comfortable with. And then we're going to turn the dough 90 degrees, fold it over itself, and then go again. And really, you're just going to keep turning and then pushing out with the heel of your hand. And you're going to do this for about 5 minutes. Now, I might not do the whole 5 minutes in front of you guys because that's probably pretty boring to watch. But I will do it for a few turns and tell you about why we need dough. So the reason we need dough is because there are proteins in wheat flour that are called gluten. And there's a couple different proteins within the gluten structure. But basically, what we're doing here is we're helping them grab onto each other in a way that makes them almost elastic. So when we first mixed our dough, really they're just getting to know each other in that bowl. And so they kind of don't have a good hold on each other. But once we start kneading the dough, we're kind of forcing them to get a better grip on the other gluten proteins. And so if we knead it for long enough and the right amount, they'll have such a good hold on each other that they're almost like a rubber band is, how a rubber band stretches, and no matter how far we stretch it, and we can stretch it pretty far, right, before it snaps. Gluten, we want it to be the same way. We want to be able to pull apart our dough and have it stretch, and clearly it's not there yet. Without it breaking. That's what gives dough that beautiful airy structure that we love. And so it's all about the gluten. It's also the same reason why if you're ever baking gluten-free, the dough tends to be a little bit crummier, more like a cake than like a bread. And that's exactly the reason why. It's because there's no gluten to kind of give it that stretch and elasticity so that when it bakes, there's those beautiful air pockets that you see in like a nice sourdough bread or even a wood-fired pizza. Same thing, it's because of the gluten. So again, you'll want to do this for about 5 minutes and just keep on turning and pushing and turning and pushing until you get a dough that is homogeneous, or I would say pretty similar, so there's no little bumps in it. It's very smooth, and you can pull it apart a little bit without it just kind of breaking in half. You can see how mine is already getting there better than it was a few turns ago. It's starting to be able to stretch apart a little bit easier. But I'm going to stop kneading for now because I already have a pre-made dough over here. Now, what you would want to do with this is once it is formed and kneaded for 5 minutes, you would put it in a greased bowl. So I'm not going to put it back in the bowl that I mixed my dough in together because what would happen is it would pretty much just stick to the sides. And when you're transferring it in and out of the bowl, you're going to have a really rough time. So what I would do is I would take the dough ball, I would put it in an oiled or a lightly sprayed bowl. I would put it in the middle and then I would put plastic wrap on top and place it in a somewhat warm place. So you don't want it to be really cold, but you also don't want to put it like on top of the oven or anything like that if the oven is hot. You want to put it in a warm place and just let it rest for 30 to 60 minutes. And then once it's rested, you will take it out, knead it for maybe 1 to 2 more minutes. And then what will happen, you'll see that it expands when it's resting. So what will happen is this dough ball will actually be quite a bit bigger. And for our veggie pizza, you only need half of this recipe. So you can cut the dough ball in half. And if you don't want to make 2 pizzas right away, you can put that other half of the dough ball, wrap it in plastic wrap, or even a plastic freezer baggie and pop it in your freezer and it will stay good for about 6 months. And whenever you feel like making a pizza, you can just put it in your fridge about the day before, let it thaw out, and then bring it to room temperature and bake it like you would fresh dough. Because dough actually freezes very, very well. So that's something you can do. Personally, if I'm making 1 pizza, I'm probably making 2. So, or you can just make 1 really big pizza or a bunch of small pizzas. This recipe, I'm going to be making 1 medium size, but pizza is a very flexible food. So you can make little mini pizzas, you can do all types of things and kind of mess with the ratios a little bit. Because we like to say at Local Matters that all of our recipes, they really just are a framework. You don't have to follow it exactly, although I would recommend for the dough you follow it exactly, but when it comes to executing the pizza, you can get a little bit creative in how you do it. So I'm gonna remove my kneading surface, put it off to the side. We're gonna pretend like our dough has set and rested for about 60 minutes. And then we will have something beautiful like this. Now you can tell this dough, as I start to pinch and pull, you'll see how truly elastic the dough gets. Again, that's because of the gluten. Now, at this point, it's pretty easy. We're just going to use our fingertips to kind of smush it towards the edges or the surface of whatever pan you're using. So right here, all we have is just a very generic baking sheet. It looks to me like a 9 by 13, maybe a little bit bigger than that. It doesn't really matter. Whatever baking sheet you want to use. You can also use a round baking sheet. If you have access to something like a pizza stone, obviously you can use that. But I am just using my fingertips to push this dough out to the edges or the surface of the pan. I will tell you that as this dough sits, it will kind of tend to scrunch back in on itself. So don't be afraid to really push it out and stretch it as far as you can, because as it bakes, it will naturally kind of shrink in again on itself. So I'm going to take some time to do that. And then after we get through pushing this dough out, we'll get to the fun stuff. Now, again, with the rest of this recipe, the quantities are optional and up to you. So when it comes to the sauce, I know everybody has a different opinion on how much sauce they like on their pizzas. Just because I put a certain amount of sauce on my pizza does not mean that you need to do the same thing. You can use less, you can use more. It really is up to you. Same thing with cheese and same thing with vegetables. Now you've got certain vegetables in your box, and of course the purpose is to use those for this recipe. But if you have other vegetables in your fridge, or maybe there's certain vegetables that aren't your favorite, you can choose to omit or add whatever veggies you would like. Today we are using red onion, mushroom, and bell peppers on this pizza. And in our salad, we're using tomatoes, carrots, and lettuce. But again, it is completely up to you. Okay, I think this looks pretty beautiful. Again, you can see I stretched it to the very corners. And you could even continue and push it up the sides if you want. I'm pretty happy with the way this guy looks now. I just want to make sure that the dough is even everywhere, because if it's not even everywhere, it's not going to cook evenly. And so it's really important that we make sure that it's as even as possible. Okay, beautiful. Now, our next step is to get all of our pizza ingredients together, something that I like to call mise en place. So mise en place means everything in its place. It's a French term. So I'm going to prepare my sauce. My cheese has already been shredded and grated, and so the cheese is ready to go. But I'm going to make our sauce, and then I'm going to prep all our veggies before we put the pizza together. So the first step with the sauce is, of course, you got a little tomato sauce can. You're going to take the tomato sauce and dump it in a bowl. So take it out of the can, put it in a bowl. The reason being is because we're going to add some herbs to this. And now this is a really easy way to elevate a canned tomato sauce without using a lot of extra money to do it, and it feels really fancy. So here we've just got an Italian herb blend. Has things like parsley and basil and oregano and some other beautiful herbs in that herb packet that you received. Now you can put as much or as little of these herbs in here as you would like. My suggestion is to put a little bit in, maybe taste it, and then keep going, because you can always add more herbs in, but you can't always take them away. So I'm actually going to put a pretty good pinch in here, maybe like a half a tablespoon to a tablespoon, because I really like Italian herbs, so we're going to start there. And it's also a good amount of sauce. You have to remember that, of course, when you're eating pizza, you're not eating all of the sauce at once. It's all spread across the entire pizza. And so you want the herbs to really shine through. And so all I'm doing here is taking our canned tomato sauce and I'm mixing in herbs. That really is all there is to it. And of course, like any good chef, I'm gonna taste it. I think it tastes delicious. I like the balance of herbs. So I'm good with that pizza sauce. Now you can also add, if you want more salt to it. A lot of canned tomato sauces already have salt added. So be wary, but you can add more salt to it. You can add pepper to it. You can really add whatever flavors you want. But I think the Italian seasoning stays really true to a classic pizza. And it really is that easy. So the sauce is ready, the cheese is ready, and finally we're getting to our beautiful vegetables. Now, again, I said I have mushrooms, bell peppers. You can use the big bell peppers. These are just kind of little baby snacking peppers. And we've got an onion that we've already used a part of, but we're going to use the rest of it on our pizza today. These have all already been washed, so if you haven't washed your produce, I recommend you do that. And then we are going to get started using those knife skills that we went over at the beginning of class. I'm going to take a quick pause, make sure everybody's caught up. Okay. Don't want to leave anybody in the dust. Okay. I am going to start with, let's see. I'm going to start with my onion. Now, you have a whole onion, so you'll want to create a flat surface first. So again, using that arch and cutting through the middle of the onion to split it in half would be the smartest move to do first off. Now, mine has already been cut, so I don't need to do that step. But once you have your onion cut in half, I like to trim off the opposite side. So you see the roots on one side. I guess this is the easiest way to identify it. If you see the roots, I trim the other side off first, just to get rid of some of that excess leaf that we don't really need. It's a little too chewy to be edible. And then make sure you peel off any of the layers on the onion that are also a little waxy on the top. Again, we don't eat those. They're a little too chewy. And then once we have this, I urge you to think about what kind of vegetables or what kind of shape of vegetables you want on your pizza. Again, this is up to you. Some people like the beautiful little slivers of onions. Other people like them small and diced. Personally, I really like my vegetables kind of small and diced because when I take a bite of pizza, I don't want to also pull off like half of the vegetables that are on that slice of pizza in one bite. And I feel like sometimes when you eat pizza, you pull off too much in the first bite or the toppings. So I actually like to mince mine, or not mince, but a small dice of my onions and my other vegetables so that each bite I take, I know exactly what I'm getting when I take a bite out of it. So I'm going to do that today. But if you like to just cut slivers, you can just use your bear claw and run your knife right down the onion half, and that'll give you those beautiful slivers. Because onions already have layers on the inside, a lot of that does the cutting work for you. But today I am going to actually make a dice on my onion. So before I run my knife down from one end to the other end, I just made vertical slits up so that when I turn my onion 90 degrees and start slicing, it gives me that kind of small half-inch dice that I am looking for, which is beautiful, exactly what I wanted. And again, you don't have to use the whole onion, you're welcome to. It really is up to you. Now I'm putting all my veggie scraps. If you see me throwing things in that direction, I'm just putting my vegetable scraps in a compost bowl so that we can compost it later. But yeah, this is pretty much exactly what I was looking for. Just tiny, small onion dices almost. And then again, I'm gonna point my knife away from me as I grab all of these with my hand to put them back in the bowl. And our onion should be set and ready to go. Now I urge you, if you don't use all of your onion for the pizza, you can use it for the salad. Any of these vegetables really that you don't use or put on your pizza, you can put on your salad. Now the next one are the little snacking peppers. Now for these, all of the seeds are kind of up here. So I'll cut the top off, that way the seeds come out along with it. But if you have a bell pepper or a bigger pepper, you might want to cut it kind of along the sides and then kind of tilt and roll your pepper this way to avoid the seeds, kind of like cutting the windows almost out of the pepper. So you'll tilt and roll your knife along the edge, cutting the orange flesh or whatever color it is, maybe it's green, maybe it's red, cutting that away while leaving the stem and the seeds kind of in the middle like this. And this kind of takes a little bit of practice, but after one or two, you'll get a good idea of how deep you need to cut in and how to kind of cut around the perimeter, like so. If you don't want to take the time to do that, you can also kind of cut it in half, rip it apart, and then take the seeds out with your hands if you prefer to do it that way. But now that I kind of have this flat surface, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut almost like a tic-tac-toe grid line. So I'm going to cut vertically this way. I'm going to turn all of those slivered pieces, and then I'll cut it again to get a very similar shape to my red onions. Now, if you want slivers, like if you did slivered onions, you can just cut these very thinly vertically, and that's perfect. And you can use that on your pizza as well. You can also almost cut these into little rings if you want to do that too. And I can show you with the next pepper how to cut into rings. But first, I'm going to create those little dices using my bear claw, tucking my fingers under. I've got all of my slices, and then I'll kind of bunch them together with my hands, using my bear claw again, running my knife in the opposite direction to create those little diced pieces, kind of like my red onion. So similar in size, they'll bake around the same time, which is exactly what we want, because you don't want a raw pepper or a raw onion with a really cooked pepper or onion. You want everything to cook about the same time on your pizza. Now, if you're creating little peppered rings, all you have to do is take a whole pepper and just slice down it like so. And as you do that, you'll start to get those iconic little ring peppers or pepper rings. A lot of times you see these with things like banana peppers. But if that's the shape you're going for, that's great as well. I'm going to cut up one more pepper. And then we will move on to our mushrooms. Now you'll see today on this vegetable pizza and in the salad that we really have quite an array of colors. And if you've seen any of our cooking classes before, I'm sure you've heard us talk about the colors in all of the fruits and vegetables that we eat. They really give us different vitamins. So orange versus yellow versus red versus purple versus even the white and the brown from the mushrooms. They're going to give us different vitamins that our body needs to thrive. So if you've ever heard someone say eat the rainbow, that's exactly why. So I've cut up a red and an orange pepper. And now, for the sake of eating the rainbow, I'm going to cut up a yellow one. And that's not to say you need to eat the rainbow in every single meal, but a veggie pizza is one of the best ways, in my opinion, to eat as many colors as possible, because you can fit so many different types of vegetables onto one pie. And I know a lot of times people say, oh, pizza isn't healthy, and a lot of the traditional, maybe fast joint pizza places maybe aren't the healthiest for us. But today we're making a pizza from scratch, which means we know exactly what is going inside of it. We know that we're using whole wheat flour in our crust, and we're using tons of vegetables that have vitamins and fiber in them. So we know that what we're eating tonight is actually a really nutritious meal. And I know some people would be like, pizza? What? That's crazy. But really, it is nutritious because we're controlling what the ingredients are and how we're choosing to prepare it. Now, I already started cutting the mushrooms, so if you saw me, I cut one piece of it off so that I could create a flat surface. Whenever I'm cutting vegetables, I want to create a flat surface as soon as possible because it creates safety. It won't roll and then I maybe accidentally cut my finger. If we have a flat surface, things are much less likely to go awry and be dangerous. So I just sliced my mushroom from the bottom to the top vertically so that I get these kind of mushroom shapes that almost look like a tree. So you'll see here that I cut up one and it gave me quite a bit. And now that I'm thinking about it, these are traditionally what you might see on a pizza, but I've done all of my other vegetables in more of a dice manner. So I'm going to go ahead and actually dice up some of these mushrooms as well. That way they are in little pieces, just like my peppers and onions. So I'll stack some of these slices up, and I'll cut again in almost like a tic-tac-toe, a grid line shape. So I'll cut them one way, and then I'll turn them 90 degrees, and I'll cut them again. And these will create beautiful little diced mushroom shapes. Again, I'm creating that flat surface by cutting off a piece of the mushroom, and then using my bear claw to run down the rest of the mushroom, creating those tic-tac-toe grid lines almost, and making a small dice. And again, use as many or as little of these vegetables as you want. Of course, the more vegetables, the more fiber, the more vitamins, the fuller you're going to be, and the more nutrients you're going to get. But again, you want it to be something that you love. So if you don't love eating this many vitamins, or well, who doesn't love eating a lot of vitamins? If you don't love eating as many vegetables, then maybe start slower and work your way. So maybe eating a whole pile of vegetables on your pizza is really strange or foreign to you. Maybe don't eat a bunch of them on one pizza, because if you don't like it, you're not going to eat it. And then what's the point of going to all the effort of making the food? So now we've got our vegetables diced up beautifully. We've got our peppers, our onions, and our mushrooms. We also have our cheese and we have our sauce. And because of this, we are now ready to make our beautiful pizza and pop it in the oven. So again, we've got our pizza dough that's been resting for a little bit. Mine hasn't shrunk in on itself at all, which is a great sign. I'm just gonna again pat it, make sure it's super even. I'm also gonna poke little holes in it. Now this isn't necessary, but this helps to make sure that it doesn't kind of bubble up and over on you. You don't want a dough that bubbles up and over on you. And then the pizza's flying all over your oven. So creating little air holes really helps with the ventilation of the dough. And then next, I am going to take our beautiful pizza sauce, and I need a spoon, so I'm going to grab that. Perfect. I've got my spoon. You don't need any fancy utensils for this, although you could use a wooden spoon, but I just like to scoop 1, 2, 3 with a traditional, tablespoon, one that you would eat with your dinner or meal. And then I take the back of the spoon and I start rolling in circles across the dough, starting from the middle out. That way, as long as you work slowly, you'll never over sauce your dough. Now, I am one of those people that happens to really love a lot of pizza sauce, so I might put more than you maybe would on your dough, but again, use as much or as little as you would like. So I'm just rolling it around with the back of the spoon here. And I'll let you know about how much sauce I use out of the can that you were given in your meal kit. Right now I've used about half, and it looks pretty beautiful. And again, it is up to you if you want to leave a big crust on the edges, or if you want to put the sauce all the way up to the edge. It's really up to you. You do not have to listen to pizza traditions when you're making your own pizza. You can really do it however you want. So I'm going to kind of push mine up into the edge. I'm looking for more of kind of like a tavern style pizza that you cut into little tiny squares, and each one has a lot of toppings on it and all the goodness. So I have sauced my dough with the herbs in it. It's already packing a lot of flavor. Next, I'm going to put the cheese on. And actually, I know a lot of people who, I do happen to be Italian, and I do know a lot of people in my family, they actually like to put the toppings on first and then the cheese on top. So again, really, like, it is truly up to you the way that you build this pizza. I'm going to put the cheese on first. So again, you're just using your grated cheese, you're sprinkling it around. Use as much or as little as you like. You don't have to use cheese if you don't want to, but I happen to think that it makes pizza what pizza is. So I'm gonna sprinkle the cheese around. And cheese is a type of dairy food. You guys might know that. And dairy has a lot of essential nutrients, if you can digest dairy, that help our bones and our teeth. So things like calcium and phosphorus and vitamin D and iodine, all of these things are really good for our bodies. Of course, everything in moderation, but cheese is a type of dairy and does provide those nutrients for us. And so we've got the cheese. The cheese will also give us a little bit of protein, and protein helps us feel full. It stabilizes our blood sugar. It does a lot of beautiful things for us as well. So I've got our cheese on there, and now that I'm looking at it, I kind of want to put a little bit more. And now that we have that going on, I'm simply just going to sprinkle my veggies across the dough. Now on your recipe card, you'll see that it says to saute your vegetables first. If you like your veggies really cooked down when on your pizza, you might want to do that. Saute your vegetables until just cooked. Let them sit for about 5 minutes in a colander to let all the excess liquid drain. And then you can put them on the pizza. I don't find that altogether necessary. And if I'm ever making pizza at home, I personally don't do that. But if you want to take that extra step and elevate your pizza even more, you are more than welcome to. So now I've got a good amount of all of my veggies kind of sprinkled across the pizza here. And at this point, you can do a couple of things. You can add more herbs on top. I also think a great choice is to add fresh herbs like basil. You might want to do that right at the end of cooking. But you can also add things like spinach. You can add even a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese, which I have here, and I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of that on top. You can add so many things. If it were my choice, I would add something green to this because green vegetables give us all of the vitamins that we need aside from vitamin D. But knowing that we are also eating this with a salad helps me know that we're getting that color in as well. So I actually think this is beautiful the way it is. I like how much sauce is on it. I like how much cheese is on it. I like the amount of vegetables. I might put a few more mushrooms on there. But this is the beauty of making a pizza at home. You can literally make it however you want in whatever proportions you want. If you're someone who likes a lot of sauce, a lot of cheese, a little cheese, certain types of vegetables, making pizza at home really isn't that difficult. It's super affordable and it always creates a delicious result. Okay, so I will stop talking and put this pizza in the oven. I'm going to check the time because I'm going to check it in about 10 minutes. My guess is this will be done in about 15, but I want to make sure that I don't leave it in there too long. So into the oven, it goes at 450. Now, while our pizza is cooking, it is the perfect opportunity to start with our salad and get our salad out of the way. So if you're making this for a group of people, making the pizza first, putting it in the oven, and then while it's in the oven, using that time to chop up all your salad ingredients, in my opinion, is the best way to do it. Now, with our salad, we've got, again, our lettuce, beautiful cucumber, tomatoes, and some shredded carrots. Now, salads, as most of us know, can be pretty much whatever we want them to be. So again, just like the pizza, use the ingredients you know you love. Maybe try one or two new things, but really make it your own. Now, the easiest way, in my opinion, to cut a head of lettuce is to actually keep it all intact, kind of squeeze it together as much as I can. And then I'm going to take my knife and my bear claw, and I'm going to start at the end of the lettuce, and I'm going to kind of slice it in thin strips. Now, because a head of lettuce is a bunch of different leaves, again, it's doing a lot of the cutting for us. There's already a bunch of separate leaves, so we don't need to cut it in every single direction in order to get beautiful ribbons of lettuce. Lettuce is also a really delicate vegetable, so oftentimes the more we cut it, the more we bruise it, and it doesn't feel or taste as fresh and delicious. So I cut it pretty much all the way down to the base like this. And as you can see, as I put it into the bowl, We only cut in one direction, but as I sprinkle this, you'll see all of the beautiful shreds of lettuce that it creates. Lettuce, in my opinion, really is one of the easiest things to cut up yourself. And pre-cut lettuce tends to be one of the most expensive things in the produce aisle. So in my opinion, always, always, always buy heads of lettuce if you can. It really is so cheap and one of the easiest things to prepare yourself. So again, I'm just, slicing right down it. If you have kiddos in the picture, this is also a really great vegetable that they can help out with because you really don't even need a knife at all. You can just rip it into tiny pieces. So you can get your kids involved by having them just each have a head of lettuce and rip it into as tiny little pieces as they possibly can. And that's a really good way for them to get involved. So I've got my beautiful lettuce here. The next one that I want to do is the cucumber. Now again, when you are cutting these vegetables, you want to think about what is the ultimate goal of the salad? Is it to have beautiful dramatic cuts? Is it to be the easiest thing to eat? Sometimes if I want a salad to be really easy to eat, I usually cut everything as small as possible so I can get a little bit in every bite. But you can also make really beautiful salads by making diagonal cuts or long, thin strips of things. With this cucumber today, I kind of want to make little half moons. So I'll show you the easiest way to do that. I like to cut my cucumbers in kind of shorter segments. And then again, you always want to create that flat surface. So I'm going to use the arch. My knife goes under the arch like a train tunnel, and I cut the cucumber right in half. That way we've got a flat surface. We're going to create that flat surface. And to make little half moons now, I'm just going to cut along the length of the cucumber all the way down using my bear claw. And again, you can make these little half moons as thick or thin as you want them. And they just kind of look like this. Again, you can cut this however you want. If you want to cut it into long, thin matchsticks, if you want to dice it really small, if you just want to cut it into rounds, like into little circles, that's perfectly okay too. So I'm going to finish cutting this cucumber up. This is a good opportunity too to talk about how I said there were different vitamins in different colored foods. And also you can tell how many vitamins are in a food based on how bright or vibrant of a color there is. So in a cucumber, in the middle it's a lighter green and on the outside it's a darker green. That darker green, since there's more color, you're gonna have more vitamins. So all of the beautiful vitamins we find in green foods, the majority of it in a cucumber is in the peel. So a lot of people I know peel their cucumbers, and if that's the only way you'll eat it, that's fine. You're still getting some vitamins, but you're missing out on a lot of the vitamins that you paid for. So I like to keep the peels on things like cucumbers if I can. Same thing for something like an apple or even a potato. I will keep the peel on. As long as I've washed it thoroughly, there's nothing wrong with eating those parts of the vegetable. And I will just keep it and I'll eat it. And it's as simple as that. So again, the more color, the more vitamins. And that's also the reason why people will say things like iceberg or romaine lettuce. If it's not very dark in color, it doesn't have as many vitamins as something like a deep dark spinach or kale, or even mixed greens. All right, so we've got our cucumbers. I'll just cut up the rest of this cucumber really quickly. And let's get on to our other veggies. Now, we've already got some carrots here that have been shredded by our wonderful chef Corey. To do this, you basically just take a cheese grater and grate the carrot down. It is that easy, but you can cut them in circles or half moons just like your cucumber. It's pretty much the same cutting technique. They're almost the same shape. But I'm going to use these carrots so they don't go to waste. Dump them all in there. And then the last one is our tomato. Now with the tomato, again, I'm going to use my arch, cut it in half to create that flat surface. And I think I am going to dice this tomato today. So now the most important thing is up at the top where it connected to the tomato plant. We usually don't eat that little nub or where the stem used to be. So I cut that off. And then again, I'm going to create a tic-tac-toe grid. I've said that a million times today. I'm going to cut this tomato lengthwise, turn it 90 degrees, and then I'm gonna go ahead and cut it again to create that beautiful dice. Now, it might seem random the order that I cut these vegetables in, but it really actually was quite intentional. Whenever I'm cutting vegetables, I like to think about which ones make the most mess on a cutting board. So for example, lettuce isn't really gonna make a mess on my cutting board, but these tomatoes, they're really watery. They're definitely gonna leave some juices on your cutting board. And that's why I chose to cut them last. That way there's nothing else that has to go on top of it. I don't have to clean my cutting board before I cut the next vegetable. It really is done after this. So I always think about, especially when making something like salad, like what is the messiest vegetable and is it possible for me to cut it last? Things like garlic too, if I have the chance, I might cut that last because it's has a very strong flavor. And so for example, if you're cutting garlic for a certain part of your meal and you cut something else on that cutting board, that vegetable is also going to taste like garlic. So just keeping those type of things in mind can really elevate your home cooking too. Just those tiny little details. Of course, it's not the end of the world, but it definitely would make your life a lot easier. So yeah, we're going to finish dicing this very last tomato, and then I'm going to teach you guys how I love to make my vinaigrette for my dressing. I'll let you guys in on a secret. I really don't remember the last time I bought salad dressing at a grocery store. And those, I mean, there's nothing wrong with buying store-bought salad dressing, but it can be really expensive, and oftentimes there's a lot of hidden ingredients in those salad dressings that we don't necessarily want to eat. So I'm gonna move my cutting board out of the way because we don't need it anymore. I'm gonna bring my salad bowl over here, and I'm going to show you how I make a vinaigrette from scratch. Really, the simplest ingredients you need are oil, some type of vinegar, and something that emulsifies it. So for any type of vinaigrette, you want to use a 3-to-1 ratio of oil to vinegar. I will say it again, 3-to-1 ratio. So for my beautiful vinaigrette here, I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of olive oil. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to use 1 tablespoon. In this case, it is red wine vinegar. You can use balsamic vinegar. You can use really any kind of vinegar you want. They all have a little bit of a different flavor, but whatever you have on hand and whatever you feel like goes with the flavors that you're trying to get here. Now, I have my oil and vinegar. I'll give it a little bit of a mix. I don't know, words are hard today. So I'll give it a little bit of a mix. And it's already starting to emulsify a bit, but if you know anything about chemistry, you know that oil and water, which vinegar is water-based, they don't mix. So if I let this sit here, it would eventually layer out into a layer of oil and a layer of vinegar, which if you're using the dressing right away isn't the biggest deal, but if it's sitting at all, it will separate. I'm also going to use a little bit of honey in there because it will help emulsify the oil and vinegar together. So maybe a teaspoon of honey for a little bit of sweetness. I'll also put a little bit of salt in my dressing. Whenever you're adding sweetness to something, you want to add a little bit of salt. And a lot of times people don't season their salad. That's something that I see a lot, is that people won't put salt and pepper and other herbs in their salad, and man, are they missing out. It really is the key. It's why a restaurant quality salad tastes so different. So I've got my oil, I've got my vinegar, I've got a little bit of sweetness in here. If you wanted to add Dijon mustard to this, that would be a great emulsifier, but that is complicating things a bit and you don't have to. So the oil, the vinegar, a little bit of honey, and the last thing I'm actually going to do to tie the meal together is actually put a little bit of that Italian herbs right into this dressing. It's going to give the salad flavor, but it's also going to make the salad and the pizza feel more of like a combined meal than 2 separate dishes. So again, you could also put red pepper flakes in here. You could put all different kinds of spices, but that's what I chose to do. And then I'm going to kind of whisk this together really well. You can use a normal whisk. I'm just using a fork. I'm going to whisk it together really. And then pour it right on top of the salad. Now, if you aren't serving this salad within the next hour or so, I would say leave the dressing on the side and do it right before, because especially with a lettuce like romaine, it will wilt the lettuce a little bit. For something more dense like kale, you're totally fine to put the dressing in there, but it will wilt the salad a little bit because of the vinegar. So again, you really want to put the dressing on almost immediately before you eat it, or within the hour or 30 minutes. Now the last thing I have are some craisins. Again, this is totally optional, but it does add a little bit of a delicious sweet flavor. It also is a beautiful reminder that you can put fruits in salad and they are delicious. So this time of year, I love to put apples in my salad. Oranges in your salad are delicious. All of those things. I am actually going to get, I need a spoon. You can also use tongs. But I'm just gonna mix my salad together. And really it's as simple as that. There's no surprises here other than making the homemade dressing. And the homemade dressing, most people have vinegar and oil in their house. There's no reason to be spending $5 or more on a dressing at the store that's probably gonna go bad in your fridge because you can't come up with enough excuses to eat it. So making your own dressing, not only is it a lot healthier for you because you can control the ingredients, but it's more cost effective and you waste less. All right, we've got our beautiful salad. Now, for the 2 heads of lettuce and the veggies that I cut up, 3 tablespoons of oil and 1 tablespoon of vinegar, or a 1/4 cup total of dressing, was absolutely plenty for something like this. Everything is well coated and dressed to the nines. So we've got our salad ready. I'm going to clear some of these dishes off because I am getting ready to check on our beautiful pizza to see how it is doing. Oh, beautiful. Okay, I'm going to give that 2 more minutes. It's looking amazing. I would love for the crust to be a little bit deeper golden brown. But what you're looking for in the pizza is you want to see that the cheese is completely melted. You want to see that the vegetables are cooked to your liking. So I want mine to be soft, but I don't want them to be wilty and kind of mushy. I want them to still have that little crisp, vibrant color to them. So cheese is melted. You want the peppers to be beautiful and bright, and the onion to be bright, and the mushrooms to be well cooked. But the other thing that I am looking for in a pizza is I want to see the crust a little bit brown. Now, if I had all the time in the world, I would probably sit here and I would wait and I would keep looking to see when the crust is brown, because everybody loves a crispy brown crust, right? But we don't always have that luxury, and I'm not going to stand here and wait for that to happen for you guys, because that would be a boring thing to watch. So I'm going to check on that in about 1 more minute and clear this so that I can show you guys the beautiful finished product. But I hope that you liked this demo. If you have any questions, again, feel free to leave them in the live chat. We will answer them now. If you had any questions about the way that we cut things, the order that we did things, if you just made your dough when the lesson started, you should be able to start your pizza now. So again, if you did not have a dough prepared and you did it at the beginning of this video, now that it's been almost 40 to 45 minutes, you should be able to pull that dough out. If it's about doubled in size, you're starting to look a little bubbly, beautiful, you can start kneading that again for 1 or 2 minutes and then stretching it on to your whatever you're baking your pizza in, and then you can get ready and start and making your pizza. But yeah, let's check on that pizza one more time, see how it's doing. Amazing. It looks beautiful. All right. So this is here. All right. This guy. Now, this is our finished product. Again, exactly what I was talking about when we were waiting for it to finish. Even 2 more minutes made a huge difference here. Like I said, the cheese is melted and bubbly and beautiful. We've even got some little crispy bits of bubbly cheese, which I love. We also, are you gonna bring the camera closer? So amazing. You can also see, just like I said, that the vegetables, they are bright and radiant, so not too mushy, but you can tell that all of them are cooked. So again, if you were concerned about not sauteing them before you put them on the pizza, this should show you that as long as you bake it at 450, those vegetables are still going to be beautiful on your pizza. And you can see that at the edges of the crust, it's starting to get golden brown. And that's pretty much exactly what you want in your finished pizza. Now, I baked mine for about 15 minutes, but if you baked a smaller pizza, just keep in mind it's going to bake a lot quicker. Or if you bake a larger pizza, it's going to bake a lot slower. So again, just keep that in mind. The last thing you would want to do with your pizza here, I'm going to let mine rest. I really don't like to cut pizza right away. Most of all because the cheese is really hot, it's harder to pull apart and it kind of gets really messy. So I like to leave my pizza for about 5 minutes before I cut it, or just at least a couple. But you can cut it into squares, you can cut it into triangles, you can cut it however you want, however is the most delicious pizza experience for you. But folks, there you have it. We've got our beautiful vegetable pizza with fiber and vitamins and proteins and whole grains, and it's delicious and beautiful and healthy. And we've also got our salad on the side to help us feel full and just to get some extra vitamins in. We got the healthy fats from the olive oil. It really is a beautiful, well-rounded dish that you could also add things to. So other vegetables and fruits that you like. If you wanted to add an animal protein to the pizza, you're more than welcome to do that as well. It really is a flexible menu as much as it is affordable, and it's delicious and it's nutritious. So really, what more could you ask for here? But yeah, we'll stick around just to see if there's any other questions. But if not, I hope you guys have a great night and you enjoy your meal.